All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this afternoon. We are pleased to have you at our first info session for the Technical Assistance Program, and we really appreciate you spending time with us today. I'm Andrea Harris-Long, one of our Technical Assistance Program coordinators, and you'll be meeting several of my other colleagues here in a minute. Very briefly, we do want to note that today's presentation is being recorded. We encourage you to keep your video on or turn it off, whatever you feel comfortable doing, but we are recording and we'll be posting this on our website for folks who can't join us live today. So over the next hour, we're going to be talking about what the Technical Assistance Program is, and namely what kind of technical assistance services we at MAPC can provide to our cities and towns. We'll also go over the application process and share some different resources to help you really develop different project ideas. And then there will be time at the end of the session for questions and answers. We do encourage you to use the chat box as we're going through the presentation. At the end, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. And if we have a lot of questions and don't have time to get through all of them today, then we'll be sure to add those to our website under the frequently asked questions. So before we really get off into the weeds of things, I want to introduce Mark Drayson, the Executive Director, to give a brief welcome and introduce the program.
Well, I'm always embarrassed by that picture, Andrea. It makes me look a heck of a lot younger than I really am. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see some definitely familiar names. Mr. Carlucci and I think, have spent the majority of the morning together, actually. It is particularly wonderful to see my good friend Pam Wolf, who I haven't seen in a long time. Hi there, Pam. And some new people as well, representing our various cities and towns. I'm excited about the TAP program this year. We have been operating this program with funds both from the municipal assessments and from an annual appropriation from the Massachusetts legislature called District Local Technical Assistance. For over a decade now. But this year, Andrea and Raul have helped to redraft the program guidelines, focus on a lot of critical issues that people have front and center in their minds, issues related to sustainability, issues related to equity, issues related to regional collaboration, in an effort to make sure that we are providing technical assistance in the areas that represent the biggest challenges in our region and the biggest needs of our cities and towns. We have many different cities and towns. They have many different needs. We have about 3 or 4 with really big planning staffs, and almost all the rest have 2 people, 1 person, 1/2 FTE, and I bet there are even a few of those in that category on the phone today. And for all of our communities, MAPC tries to step in and provide assistance and support when you don't have that capacity or knowledge directly in your government offices already. We encourage you to develop applications across many, many different topic areas. And we are almost certain to have some folks at MAPC who could provide assistance and support to you in that regard. If we can't, we'll be honest with you and tell you, but sometimes we might be able to refer you to another party to help with that. So just like the sort of abilities of our staff are one limitation on the TAP applications we can fund, there's one more that I want to mention, and that's money. The appropriation from the legislature has increased from time to time, but not for many years now. And we are always able to fund about 2/3 of the applications that come in. And often we have to work with the communities to apply for additional state aid if a project is bigger than one we can fund on our own. And we do that. We often work to help you folks get additional resources from EEA or from DHCD or from any one of number of state agencies. Or we might have to ask for a municipal contribution, which we don't like doing, but sometimes we have to do it because we can't fund the entire project. So I'm hoping you all keep that in mind if you are fans of the Technical Assistance Program. That means by definition that you are fans of the District Local Technical Assistance line item in the state budget. And that budget process will be getting underway in the next couple of months, and we will always be asking your legislators and town and city officials to help us advocate at least for level funding, if not for more funding, so that we will be able to actually respond positively to many of the applications that come into us. I'll close with one final important note, and that is that I have a particular personal commitment, and we at MAPC have an agency commitment to trying to make sure that more of our projects funded by DLTA and by municipal assessment funds through the TAP program advance equity in the region, and particularly racial equity. Sometimes this can be done by adopting a program that is really heavily focused on equity issues. Sometimes you have an important local project that has to be done that isn't particularly equity focused, but elements can be incorporated into it in order to make sure that the engagement procedures or other elements of the project itself will help to advance equity even when that isn't the main goal. I hope that we can all work together to develop project ideas and to improve project ideas that will enable us as a region to deal with critical issues of opportunity, of racial equity, of segregation, and other stressors that have been sadly a big part of this region's history for a very long time, and which I know we are all committed to trying to overcome through our actions and our work. So with that, I'm going to thank you all for being here. Special thanks to Andrea and Raul, and also Mark Ratzicott, for the enormous amount of effort that they have put into this program. And I'll turn it back over to Andrea.
Thanks, Mark. That's a great kickoff into the next hour in the technical assistance program. So thank you so much. As I mentioned, I'm Andrea, one of the TAP coordinators. I'm also joined with Raul, my fellow TAP coordinator. So I'll let him introduce himself and then we'll get going with the program.
Great, thank you, Andrea. My name is Raul Gonzalez. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Senior Economic Development Planner here at MAPC, or one of them at least. Along with the TAP coordinator role, I manage the MAPC Economic Development District and co-lead the equity team. Next slide. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about MAPC's Technical Assistance Program, or TAP for short. Really, TAP provides the cities and towns within our region to leverage our agency's expertise in multiple planning areas, which you can see here on the right, and I'll discuss a little bit further throughout the day. Through this work, staff time is spent working within our communities to further our mutual goals, particularly those that support smart growth, equity, and regional collaboration. All 22 cities and 79 towns within our region, that's coastal communities, older industrial towns, rural towns, large cities within the MAPC region are eligible for TAP. Can you go on to the next slide, please? TAP is utilized to implement local, regional, and state plans and policies, advance Metro Common, our new regional land use and policy plan, for their projects that incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and bring cities and towns together to benefit multiple communities throughout the region. No, they don't have to be contiguous communities, as well as furthering other strategic priorities for our agency. Next slide. So I'll pass it over to Andrea.
Thanks. And as Mark mentioned in his opening remarks, there are two primary funding sources for the TAP program, one being the district local technical assistance that's appropriated annually by the state legislature and governor. And we really appreciate this continued state support. This money is distributed across all of the regional planning agencies in Massachusetts. And then the other primary funding source is Planning for Metro Common Technical Assistance, which, as was mentioned, is generated from the municipal assessments paid by MAPC at municipalities. We also, together, this is about $1.25 million. We try to leverage that money against some of the other funds that support our planning work, primarily being the federal funds that we get through the Unified Planning Work Program. We have private foundation grants that support various planning projects. We couple TAP funds with a lot of our state grant programs and partners to really have a robust project budget for different planning projects. And then we also, as Mark mentioned, can couple TAP funds with local funds to be able to fund more robust projects. So every year we do award a little over $1 million in TAP funding to support various projects. The various funding sources have allowed us to fund a lot of projects. Just in 2022, we funded either partially or completely, 47 different projects, of which 14 were multi-community projects. And the table on the right here shows over the last 7 years how many different communities we worked in. You can see that almost 100 were multi-municipal projects, which is really exciting. And then you can see that we've done, multiple projects in some communities, fewer in some. So we really try to work with as many folks as we can in the region and make sure that this is truly a regional collaborative program.
So I'm going to go into a deeper dive into our focus areas and recent projects. So first off, our community engagement team, they strive to make the entire planning process inclusive, clear, and accessible to all. They've helped municipalities improve community engagement practices through trainings and workshops, and have specialized in projects that improve language access, online and hybrid engagement, and other forms of equitable access and inclusion. Our land use department, which includes our housing and economic development teams, specializes in plans and programs that solve a range of land use and zoning issues. They include comprehensive plans, downtown and neighborhood plans, equitable transit-oriented development, open space and outdoor recreation plans, amongst many others. Furthermore, MAPC helps municipalities with zoning and land use regulation to protect and enhance the environmental, economic, and social quality of life in the region. The housing team within land use works with municipalities on housing production plans, producing residential market analyses, creating mixed income neighborhood and transit-oriented development plans, gathering, interpreting, and sharing housing data, drafting zoning bylaws and ordinances, and assisting with community engagement and outreach. This includes assisting in Section 3.8 guidelines for multi-family zoning districts in MBTA communities, and visioning for the disposition of public property, amongst a few things. The economic development team within land use, which is my team, is focused on advancing an equitable economic recovery and building economic resilience. We develop strategies that prioritize and support community and economic progress, including workforce development, community investment in small businesses, particularly those led by BIPOC or immigrant owners, as well as sustainable, resilient economic exchange, childcare, and transit access. Next slide. The transportation department work including transportation demand management, parking, and alternative uses for parking spaces, complete streets programs, transportation finance, climate change and transportation, including electric vehicle infrastructure, dedicated bus lanes, and other activities. As we can see, there's quite a bit of discussion on bus electrification in our chat. Several of their district plans have integrated strategies to enhance wayfinding, multimodal transportation options, and a sense of place. The Environment Department provides technical assistance and policy guidance to municipalities on issues ranging from climate preparedness and vulnerability assessments to natural hazard mitigation to sustainable water management. The Clean Energy Department provides a range of services to communities, including climate and net zero planning, technical assistance focused on developing and implementing local clean energy and climate programs, policies, as well as specific projects like the North Suffolk Energy Action Plan, as well as net zero action plans, like you see in Framingham and Natick. Our public health department leads and assists with the evaluation of environmental, behavioral, and policy changes implemented by cities and towns, and with assessments of investments in social determinants of health by other allied public health partners, including hospitals, health centers, community-based organizations, and other planning organizations. Their work varies from substance use prevention to food systems planning to comprehensive wellness plans, amongst others. Next slide. And rounding us out, our arts and culture team specializes cultural planning, creative placemaking, and creative community development, as well as cultural policy. They provide a range of support to municipalities in areas such as town center revitalization, neighborhood level cultural planning, cultural district planning, public arts procurement, and creative placemaking. They include a project in rehabilitating the Beachmont Fire Station in Revere, and turning it into a public arts center, as well as the Chinatown Arts and Culture Plan, in which Archana will present on in further detail. The Municipal Collaboration Department operates a comprehensive and innovative group purchasing program for municipalities as well as other buyers. It coordinates joint procurements, helps cities and towns to collaborate in the delivery of municipal services, promotes best practices in the efficient and effective management of local government, and works to improve public safety for our region. And last but certainly not least, our data services department compiles and standardizes data sets from cities and towns to create a useful region-wide mosaic of local conditions. They use surveys and crowdsourcing to collect information from individuals and harvest and process unstructured data from the web to create new real-time information. Their staff members include geographic information systems or GIS analysts, web mapping experts, regional planners, and researchers organized into 4 of their working groups. Next slide. So I'm just going to go into some departmental examples and working with my colleagues, Courtney and Archana. We've invited them to discuss their projects. Next slide. First will be Courtney Lewis, who will go over the Revere Childcare Zoning Project. I'll pass it over to you, Courtney.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Courtney Lewis. I'm a senior planner in the land use department at MAPC, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share information with you about some work that I'm currently doing with the city of Revere. Next slide. In an effort to reduce barriers to employment opportunities and job training, and to provide greater and more equitable access to childcare, the city of Revere partnered with MAPC on a project to amend the city's existing zoning ordinance for home-based childcare. The project is funded through TAP and supported by community development block grant funds from the city. Improving access to childcare is a pressing problem throughout the country, which was made worse by the pandemic. Revere, especially, was one of the communities hardest hit by the pandemic, and in addition to having one of the highest rates of infection, the city also experienced a consistently high unemployment rate due to the high proportion of the workforce that's employed in the restaurant and hospitality services industries. This project builds on and is directly tied to the city's workforce development plan, which was also a TAP-funded project that Revere partnered with MAPC to complete in 2021. This planning process is being guided by an advisory committee whose membership is composed of various leaders and representatives from community organizations and community coalitions in the city. One of the recommendations from the workforce development plan was for the city to revise its zoning regulations for childcare uses to help incentivize development, the development of more childcare facilities, and more specifically, home-based childcare facilities. Next slide. The Department of Early Education and Care sets standards for childcare programs throughout the state, including home-based childcare centers. However, the city's current ordinance is more restrictive than the state's regulations. The state allows a licensed family child care provider to care for up to 10 children, but local zoning regulations limit providers to 4 children. So if the zoning is successfully amended, this would mean this would provide several benefits and would help increase access to childcare for Revere residents. It would allow more parents and guardians to enter the workforce and allow more providers to to bring home-based childcare centers online in the city. It would also it would also help prepare children to be ready for school.
Thank you so much, Courtney. So now I'm just going to pass it over to Archana to go over the Chinatown Cultural Plan.
Thank you, Courtney. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Archana Menon, and I'm the Arts and Culture Fellow here at MAPC. And I'm currently working on projects focused on cultural planning and policy, arts and culture advocacy, and creative placemaking. Very briefly, I'm going to talk to you about one of the many exciting projects that we are working on in the Arts and Culture Department, namely the Chinatown Cultural Planning Project. But before that, I just want to highlight that MAPC is among the very few regional planning agencies in the country that has a dedicated arts and culture focus among its various areas of expertise, which enables our department to facilitate intentional conversations about how a deeper understanding of arts and culture in communities helps them become more vibrant, inclusive, and resilient, and most importantly, creates new pathways of collaboration for larger planning efforts. Now, the Chinatown Cultural Planning Project is unique in that the request for the technical assistance was submitted by the City of Boston's Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture in collaboration with multiple community-based organizations, including Asian Community Development Corporation, Chinatown Community Land Trust, the Rose Kennedy Greenway Conservancy, and the Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center. As you might know, Boston's Chinatown and the former South Cove neighborhood have a long and complex history as well as a vibrant cultural life that for too long have been invisible to the general public. The COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent racial rhetoric that came to the fore during this period led to severe economic impacts, with many businesses in the neighborhood being shuttered and community members struggling to pay rent and indeed survive. Chinatown will remain an important cultural center for the region only if the places, people, and partnerships that give this neighborhood its unique identity are protected and celebrated. And so the goal of the project is the creation and publication of a Chinatown cultural plan by early next fall, as an addendum to the 2020 Chinatown Master Plan, which was also an MAPC-led effort. The heritage of Chinatown, the history, the culture, these are the kind of main emphasis areas for this cultural plan, and it will include a collective vision for preserving and enhancing them, and also articulate pathways for support for priorities outlined in the master plan around housing, mobility, public health, environmental justice, and open space. The plan will consider intersections of culture, community, and neighborhood small businesses, and will identify economic development strategies to support Chinatown small businesses and workers as part of the neighborhood's creative and cultural economy. Therefore, in essence, the Chinatown Cultural Plan will knit distinct programs and initiatives led by different community partners and the City of Boston into a strong fabric that preserves and grows the identity of Chinatown as an authentic neighborhood, business, and cultural center. And with that, I'll hand it off to, I think I hand it back to Andrea. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Archana and Courtney, for sharing those project examples. I think it's a great showcase of just some of the more innovative things that we can help communities do. So now that hopefully you have some wheels turning for projects that your communities can maybe partner with us to do, we wanted to spend time talking about how you can apply. So each year we release a call for project concepts that outlines what our funding priorities are, the kind of information that we need about your project idea, and then kind of an example of the projects that we can do. So this year we created an application to hopefully make the process a little easier on you for applying and also a lighter lift. We also are encouraging communities to apply by January 16th because this is when the most funding is available, and we'll begin reviewing applications in January and hopefully start announcing awards in February. So there's the call for project concepts and then an online application that's done through DocuSign. So with the new web-based form, it asks many of the same questions that we've had in previous years. We still want to get a general idea for the project that you're looking to do, including what types of deliverables you're wanting to get out of the project, your anticipated outcomes, and the timeline that you see fitting for the project. We want to encourage that projects don't have to be fully fleshed out at this process, but we just want to kind of get a general sense of what you're hoping to accomplish. We also want to understand how the project connects to your local priorities, regional priorities, or state priorities and plans. And we also want to know what kind of local capacity or support is already existing for the project. As I'm sure you all know, the planning process requires a lot of time and dedication from local leaders and community members, and we want to make sure that we're awarding funding to projects that are ready to start that work. We also have a few new questions that are included to help us understand how projects may advance equity. These questions ask about community partner involvement, engagement activities, and how environmental justice communities or other historically marginalized groups can be benefited through the project. And again, MAPC staff is available to help you think through, different ways to involve folks or partners and different engagement opportunities. Beyond the questions that help us understand the project that you're looking to do, the application does have a few requirements. The application must be endorsed by the lead municipality's CEO or a designated member of the management team. This could be the planning director or an assistant town manager, someone who has that link to the CEO. Also, the lead applicant must have an appointed MAPC council representative. And we want to really underscore that there's not a match requirement for this process. However, as it's been mentioned earlier, local matches can help us to prepare a more comprehensive scope of work and achieve whatever project outcomes you have. And lastly, a new part of the application is acknowledgement of how your project aligns with our racial equity, diversity, and inclusion goals to make sure that our projects are being inclusive throughout the whole process and of a project. And again, I want to plug that MAPC staff is here to help you with the application process and helping to refine your project ideas. Raul and I and other staff members are always happy to schedule a one-on-one call with you to just kind of talk through what you're thinking and how we can help. So I think now we're going to shift gears and take you to the new website. So it's really exciting. Raul and I and Mark and others have been working really hard to update the Technical Assistance Program website with a lot of different resources to help you apply for the program and kind of understand what options are out there. So you can find it by going to our website about MAPC and then Technical Assistance Program. And you'll come to this lovely new page where you can click on the call for concepts and see a PDF of all of the requirements and the application questions, the application itself that you can fill out online, which I'll go over in just a minute, and then a few other resources that we have, a list of sample projects by practice area that aligns with what you just heard from Raul, Archana, and Courtney. And then we also have a new resource that talks about equity, how we think about equity as we're doing projects at MAPC, and some examples of really equity forward projects that we've done through the TAP program and other sources at the agency. A few other things on the website that I'll point out before we switch over to the application. So this section talks a little bit about how we prioritize our funding. As was mentioned earlier, it's really important that our projects advance racial and social equity and align with MetroCommon 2050, our regional plan. We also know that a lot of folks are trying to comply with Section 3A and doing a whole list of, housing choice initiatives to address the housing crisis. So that's a priority for us too, whenever we prioritize our funding. The other cool thing on the website that I want to point out is that we, because as we mentioned, the district local technical assistance, the state funding funds a lot of our projects, we put together a mid-year legislative report. And this is maybe a good resource if you're not quite sure what kind of project you want to do, or you want to see some recent projects, you can go and download these mid-year legislative reports and kind of see what's been going on in the region and what kind of work we've been doing. And then we also have some frequently asked questions at the bottom of the website that will continue to, as we hear questions and help to answer, things about the program, we'll continue to grow this list so that you have all the information, hopefully, that you need to apply. So now I want to show the call for concepts. Hopefully, if you have made it to the webinar, you've already maybe looked at this because you've seen some of our other communications. But the call for project concepts goes over all of the details about how to apply, the requirements, our priorities, links to the various resources that are directly related to this process. And then we have the new application form. And so I like to think that it's kind of useful to look at this PDF to do your planning, think about your project. And then once you're ready to actually do the application, you can click here and it'll take you to a DocuSign form. And to get into here, I'll just quickly walk through how you can access this. And you can, you don't have to fill it out as soon as you open the form. You can just kind of put your name and email in to take a peek at it and then submit it at a later time. So you'll come to this landing page, put your name and email in, and then click this begin signing. And then you click continue. This is saying continue because I tested earlier. And then it just shows you the PDF again, but where you'll see a difference is you go to the bottom and you can start to fill in the application here. So if you are, doing it separately, responding with your answers, you can copy and paste them in here if that's easier for you. But you just type in all of your responses. As I mentioned, a lot of these questions are similar to what we've asked in the past. It's just hopefully a little easier. You can just kind of walk through, put in your project description, list any relevant plans, talk about the local capacity. These are the new questions that I mentioned. So helping us understand how you're going to involve different groups in the process and how your project will help advance racial equity and social equity. And then if you are a community that's looking for 3A assistance, we do have a couple of questions that are specific to that, helping us understand what part of 3A compliance this TAP application may be responding to. And then also, because affordable housing is one of our priorities, how do you envision affordable housing in your 3A compliance? We also have a question about how this connects to the regional plan, Metro Common. And then lastly, some questions about, if you have worked with a staff member to develop the project concept, you can indicate that here so that it helps Raul and I to coordinate internally as we are getting proposals in and reviewing. If you know you have a representative, you can go ahead and select that here. And then if you do have other funds that you can contribute to the project, you can let us know in this section of the application. And then lastly, there's an opportunity for you to attach your letter of support from that municipal CEO or other designated leadership person. And then an acknowledgement of the racial equity, diversity and inclusion statement. And then you sign here, click finish, and I'm not going to click it because it's going to tell me I didn't fill it out properly. But once you click finish, then you'll get an opportunity to download your application and save it for your records, and it'll automatically get sent to us. And then Raul and I will be in touch with you to let you know about the next steps in the process.
So thank you so much.
Yep, Raul's going to now talk about some tips for the process.
Yes, thank you so much, Andrea, for that. So just to close out our presentation, we're just going to go over some final tips. I think kind of wanted to reiterate, particularly in getting a successful TAP project. As a reminder, our funding priorities will focus on projects that advance racial and social equity, serve multiple communities, and that is communities perhaps with multiple goals or similar goals. They do not have to be contiguous, though it is helpful, as well as if you work within your subregion, which I'll talk a little bit in the next slide. And lastly, projects that implement housing choice initiatives. Next slide. We have multiple resources that Andrea showed to help you in this as well. There's a contact list of our department heads for each of the departments that I mentioned earlier, as well as sub-regional coordinators, and a sample list of eligible projects, both of which you can find within the TAP website. Next slide. And I'm very, very, very happy to announce that now our TAP equity resource is on the website as well as the fourth button up on top. It contains our agency's definition of equity, of what we consider to be an equity leading project, as well as a list of projects and an additional resource list. You can also connect with our equity team, which is a cross-departmental group of staff that works to further equity within our agency's work, both internally and externally. So it's a great opportunity to learn about MAPC's vision for equity within our region. Next slide. Lastly, and I cannot stress this enough, utilize your subregions and your subregional coordinators. You can see on the map here to the right in which subregion your community lies. You can also find it on the TAP contact list and the MAPC website, or to connect to your subregional coordinator. It's a great opportunity for you to brainstorm ideas with multiple other communities within the subregion, partner to address shared challenges and opportunities, and share potential project proposals with your subregional coordinators. Next slide. And this will be Andrea.
Yeah, and the other thing that we wanted to put a plug in as both a resource and an opportunity is to leverage TAP funds for state grants. So if you know that you want to do a larger plan that might be, you know, a little bit bigger than what we normally would be able to fund fully through the TAP program, something like a comprehensive plan, a housing production plan, a major zoning update, or another sort of larger project, and you know that you want to work with MAPC on this project, then we do encourage you to reach out to us, because we can help you maybe identify a grant program that could wholly fund the project, but then we can also maybe leverage some TAP funds to serve as a match for the grant. And we would be able to help you either write the grant application or at least develop the scope of work for the application. And we've done this for several years with a lot of different communities, and it's been an excellent partnership to work with communities and do these larger projects, and also leverage the TAP funds against some of our state level planning grant programs. On the right here, you can see a few different examples of just this past year. We worked with the town of Essex to help them apply for a community one-stop grant, where we provided a $15,000 match through TAP for a major zoning bylaw update and 3A compliance project. We helped Acton and Marlborough secure grants for their 3A compliance work. And then we also helped Belmont get a grant for a housing production plan and visioning effort. So this is just another resource out there for you that's TAP adjacent, but also a resource that goes beyond TAP. So before we kind of turn it over, we've been talking a lot and want to hear from you all, but we did want to just make note of a few takeaways. So I hope that you can go after this and take a look at the call for concepts and all of the different resources that we've gone over. Please do utilize the resource of our staff contact list. Also on the MAPC website, you can go and see all of the staff by department. We encourage you to email, call staff if you want to talk about different projects. Definitely reach out to your sub-regional coordinators and just, you know, use us as a resource to brainstorm your different project ideas. And then, of course, always you can reach out to Raul and I. Our emails and phone numbers are on here. We're always happy to chat and hear from you. So I'm going to stop sharing so that we can use the last 15 minutes to hear from you all and try to answer questions.
Do we just jump in if we have a question?
If you want to raise your hand or type it in the chat box. Do you have a question, Jack? If you do, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't know what the protocol was. Could you speak generally about education and training that would involve high school students? If you, rather than me pose a question about specifics, just in general, do you see a fit, or can you speak to ways in which education and training that would be in the category of workforce development might fit?
Yeah, I think, Raul, do you want to talk about the economic development team and any workforce development work that maybe has been done in that vein?
Speaking to specifics might be a little bit more in depth, but we have done a lot of workforce development work at the economic development team. We're currently doing a workforce development plan for the city of Lynn, particularly focusing on their BIPOC community. We've also done quite a bit of workforce development plans by connecting specifically to some of the workforce investment boards, the WIBs, within our greater region, which is kind of overlaps in a semi-unusual way to pretty much put together workforce development plans connecting to those geographies as well. So I know it's kind of like a bit of a semi-adjacent thing to describe, but more than happy to chat with you in detail at the conclusion of this.
That's great, thank you. And I noticed that there was a question in the chat, if multi-town collaboration goes across 2 subregions, is that a problem? And no, that's great. We do not have any requirements for that. The more the merrier. Mark, go ahead. Did you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment someone on what Jack said, because in addition to your asking a question, I also saw the item in the chat about GIS education at the high school level, I think. You know, generally speaking, we do not do educational programs in the schools. And from a policy perspective, education is kind of one of the few areas that we haven't been that actively involved in. Most of our workforce stuff, which Raul talked about, is not directly related to school programs. But, you know, we do have a fully trained GIS staff, and they love talking about their work. So I'm not completely discouraging you from coming up with an application, and we can all kick it around a little bit. But we are not generally an educational institution in the schools. So I just didn't want you to be overly hopeful of that.
That's great, thank you. Looks like there was another question in the chat that I just want to make sure gets answered for everyone. So someone asked, are the funds just for planning purposes, no purchasing goods or services? And responded, yes, it is just for planning services. So we don't actually do the purchasing, but we can help you with your procurement processes if you are having questions or want to do that.
No, I think I might have something to add on that one too, Andrea. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, Mark. Yeah.
So we have, as you know, an entire procurement division, and it's not uncommon. I don't know who asked the question. I'm trying to see who asked the question. And
it was me, Erin, from the town of Wheatfield.
Hi there, Erin.
Hi, Mark.
Yeah, good to see you. We do have an entire procurement practice in our municipal collaboration department. It's not uncommon for a planning process to develop a program that involves procurement, an outcome. And then municipal collaboration can work with you on the actual procurement of those materials or services. We do procurement for both goods and services. So that is not uncommon, even though we would generally use TAP to do the planning to set that up.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks. We had another question about the timeline in the application. How do you typically want that outlined? Hours, days, weeks, etc. I think we are looking for loose timeline. Months are great. We don't need you to get super specific. Just give us a general sense of, especially when you hope to have something done, if it's going to be going to a town meeting, or if there's an anticipated time where you want it to be taken to a board or committee for review or approval, that would be really helpful to include in the application so that we can help plan around that.
And if I can just jump in there, also through the scoping process, once your project is selected, knock on wood, it will be, it will go through the process of scoping in which we will dedicate our hours for the project. So then we will do a bit of a breakdown on a task by task, deliverable by basis, more often than not. But that's the process that we operate internally. I see, Dorothy, you have your hand up.
Yes, thanks, Raul. I'm Dorothy Herder from Sherborne, a very small community, but we are sharing our schools with the regional school district over Sherborne. And my question is regards to e-bus, school bus services. Mark, thank you for responding in the chat to e-buses and to referring to Julie Curdy at MAPC for being the point person. I just want to make sure here that we're not talking about the procurement of buses or the purchase of e-buses, but rather we're looking for thinking or helping these communities that are currently and also in the future, contracting with companies and providers for school buses are turning or providing also electric school buses in the near future when our contracts are up. We are in a region that is Metro West. We have basically a large supplier outfit that has not been very responsive to electric school bus companies to start corporations or models that will leverage any kind of offerings of, let's say, a small part of the fleet being electric. So we and two other communities that are with the same contractor outfit have the desire to green or to get these services basically kind of like sprout in our area. And we would need the kind of like a planning support in this, because it will be involving electrical infrastructure at the schools themselves to charge these buses that we contract, and also land use, where to find basically pieces of land or at the schools that could be where these electric school buses could be having a depot. And I will just stop here. Looking for more communities. We're currently Medfield and Natick who are interested in this, but we know that there are more communities that are contracting with Connelly.
So let me having jumped into the chat, I'll try and handle that, Dorothy. Is it Dorothy or Dorothea? I'm sorry.
Dorothea.
Dorothea.
Thank you, Mark.
Sherborne is well represented. You may be small, but you're mighty on today's call. I am not an expert on electric school buses. So I want to be clear about that. It sounds like the issue that you're having, the discussion you're having, covers a variety of areas related to electric school bus, both the short-term question of whether or not a contractor to whom your region may be somewhat captive
Exactly.
can be encouraged to have more interest in electric school buses, all the way to the question of providing for charging, depoting, and maybe eventually down the road, communities negotiating an arrangement with another contractor who is interested in electric or purchasing electric school buses directly. I know that we have been working with some communities to buy electric school buses. Sounds to me like maybe you'll be there someday, but you're not there now.
Exactly.
I think that,
yeah.
To have a conversation about this, because I have now completely exhausted my knowledge in what I've just said. I think that a conversation with both Julie and possibly our municipal collaboration director, Mark Fine, who oversees procurement, would be the most helpful at beginning to flesh out this idea. It's just like Andrea and Raul said, sometimes you have a kernel of an idea, but you need a little help from some of us to flesh it out and say, well, these two things are not worth pursuing, but these three things are worth pursuing. So exactly. I would, and Andrea or Raul can help to put you in touch with Mark and Julie. You folks can have a conversation and then decide whether or not a TAP application is appropriate, and if so, what its contours might be.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mark. You answered all of my questions. And we have Medfield on here as well, Hilly Passas, and Natick through Jillian Wilson-Martin are also interested in that. And I'm hoping that on this call, we have more people that are, bound to the same provider that doesn't really want to budge on that. That would be Connelly. If you're representing one of these communities, please get in touch with me, Dorothea von Herder. I'm going to put this in the chat. And thanks so much, Raul and Andrea, for putting us in touch to figure out if the TAP is a good match for us.
Can I just follow this up? Hilly Passas from Medfield. I have been looking around the area here that's covered by MAPC, and the issue that a lot of school districts have, that they are beholden to just one school bus provider, is ubiquitous. And I think that is holding a lot of communities back in not having leverage to get these vendors to provide the electric school buses that they were looking for. And I think this might be a project that could serve as a model for other areas to provide, alternative ways of getting to electric school buses. So if you're interested, even if you're not Connolly, just get in touch, please.
Great, thank you both. Are there any other questions or clarifications that we can make about the application or the process in our last few minutes together?
I see that my colleague Gino Calucci is on the call as well, and we were having another question in regards to something that might be a good fit for TAP. We and our partner community Dover might be interested in you helping us with a tree bylaw. My question is, have you ever had applications? Do you have expertise on helping us to in that regard?
Yeah, I do know that we've helped some communities with tree bylaws. Mark Rassicott, I might lean on you to remind us who those are.
Right. Our most recent work was in the town of Linfield on a tree bylaw. This was done in conjunction with a grant from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. Prime example of what Raul and Andrea were talking about earlier. This was a part of a larger project, but it fit well within the EEA goals. And so we worked with the community to file a grant. They got the grant. It was partially funded by the grant and partially funded by MAPC's TAP program.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for joining us. And I see, Susan, you have a question about the Linfield. We can connect you offline to put you in touch with Linfield. Any other questions or last thoughts? Again, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time and hope that you got some good information, and hope to hear from you after this too, once you have an opportunity to digest and continue thinking about how we can help you and your communities.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate you all joining us today. As the main point that we want to stress is that the door is always open. You're more than welcome to reach out to us at any point of this process for yourselves, as well as connecting with staff and sub-regional coordinators as well. And of course, we'd love to hear you all also connect with other communities that were here today. I would like to thank, on behalf of Andrea, Courtney and Archana, and Mark in joining us today in this presentation and providing those really insightful examples.
Yes, well, thank you. I think with that, seeing no other questions, we'll wrap up. Again, this will be on our website should you want to watch it or share it with your friends and colleagues. And we hope to get some great TAP applications from some of you. Have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.